Hi, this is Jennifer Mulholland and Jeff Shuck. We are the authors of Leading with Light, Choosing Conscious Leadership When You're Ready for More.
Recently on our podcast, Plenty for Everyone, we shared conscious leadership lessons that we've learned in our 10 years of working together. Each of these 10 lessons highlights one of the concepts that we share in the book.
We hope you enjoy this glimpse into Leading with Light, and we hope you buy the book itself, available in March 2024.
So, our fourth one kind of follows from the last three. These all kind of blend together in a certain
Right.
way. I really can see our 10 years of learning here. It's really
Mhm.
fun. Our fourth lesson is not to pull the rope. And it's interesting that I wrote this down because this is actually a phrase that I learned from you that you say a lot. So I'm going to tee it up and then um, let you talk about it more. It's kind of a motto that we use to kind of say, stop proving, stop convincing, stop cajoling, stop trying to maneuver. I think specifically a big learning for us has been in the sales process about kind of convincing people that they want to work with us. We don't do that anymore. And we're going to talk about that more in a later one. But we mean it beyond that. It's not just about sales. It's about like kind of not needing to justify who you are or explain yourself, but not pull the rope. Don't bring people along. And I think the training ground here has often been coworkers and people that have been on our team. And especially when we got more and more into conscious strategy, conscious leadership, the idea of spirituality in business, bringing your full self to work, a lot of the things that we talk about every day in the podcast, not all of our team members at the time were comfortable with that. And we spent some time, this was long ago, trying to convince people that it was important. And I remember this was years and years ago, but having a lot of conversations with you where you would say, we have to stop pulling the rope. We have to stop trying to like get people to believe things that they don't believe and let them choose what they want, which might mean choosing out of plenty. Um, I'm kind of wired to want everybody to like me. It's a great
Mhm.
strength and it's a huge weakness, and it's a huge practice ground for me over the last 10 years. And this one's really been a great learning. I think it leads into authenticity, which we're going to talk about more here in a bit, but not needing to always justify and explain is how I'd sum up don't pull the rope.
Yeah. I definitely see it so differently today than I did like 7 years ago. And I think the phrase really came to us when we were working with a large client. I wish I could name them. A very well-known brand, and I learned a lot from them. I would love to go back and say thank you, because they have no idea what a teacher they were, to us in, leading a session and really feeling that energy of like knowing what you see is best for them and kicking into that convincing, proving, striving mode, which in my kind of shadow side is that shadow side of Jennifer that has had that kind of tendency to want to be seen and want to be right and want to accomplish and want to be successful. And the
Mm,
way I've
yeah.
like done that is to like put my view of the world onto you and or to prove to you why I'm valuable and or why we're valuable and have a great solution for you. And I don't what I know about that engagement was it was so toxic and it was so striking that they weren't ready to hear our message. They weren't ready to be facilitated in the way that
Yeah.
we wanted to. And so it was a mismatch. And what happened energetically was we came back and we were so exhausted. I was so drained. I didn't get out of my pajamas for the whole weekend. And that's just so not me. And I remember being like, wow, this is the consequence of pulling the rope, of trying to prove to
Mhm.
somebody or others or an organization that the process is worth trusting, and they did not want to be there. So
Yeah.
we learned so much of that, and I think what has happened in sales, as an example, or attendees coming to our retreats, is really trusting that, again, I'm going to come back to energy, like frequency, like attracts like. And so the clearer we can be with our intention, the clearer we can be with our light and our energy and our frequency, the clearer the match will be at that level. I really do believe that. And it doesn't mean that we don't serve and help people that have different points of view or different energies than ourselves. But being in a different relationship with, we get to be more authentically ourselves and trust that if that is a match for others, which it often is, then what happens is it becomes easy. And this is where we go into following flow. It actually is easier to find that match by being more authentic and vulnerable and real, forthright, than it is to try and convince somebody your value, your enoughness, your worth. And that is something like that has been really uncomfortable to practice and scary at
Yeah.
times, that even with team members, especially around the spirituality front, like, why are we talking about soul and heart space and in business? I mean, I just remember those days were
Yeah.
so difficult for me. I knew that was why I was here, and what my contribution can be to Plenty and many more things, but it was so met with resistance and felt very difficult to find my way around other than pulling the rope. And so I think this has been really helpful for us to know when we are kicking into proving, striving, convincing, we're off. And it's as simple as just saying that. We know that we're off.
Yeah.
This is off. It's becoming too difficult. We're having many meetings on it. We're discussing it too much, and is leaving us frustrated, triggered, drained, exhausted. Those are all the cues for us that it's off for us.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I'll let you get a word in, but
I didn't
that's
know. What I love is all of these probably have a deeper spiritual practice or deeper, like, other message. And what occurs to me as I listen to you talk about pulling the rope, the real practice for me around this has been being comfortable with people not agreeing, being comfortable with there being other viewpoints in the world. And
yeah,
sometimes I
definitely.
want to shut them all down and close all my social media feeds and take my football and go play by myself. And other times I want to shout over people and tell them I'm right. But really, the practice about not pulling the rope isn't just about um, being confident enough not to persuade people. It's about being comfortable with there being other viewpoints and they don't necessarily impact me. I can hold space for people to disagree without taking them on. And I really do think that's something, at 53, I'm way more ready for than I was at 43, where it seemed like if we didn't agree, we didn't get along. And now I really see the possibility of everyone getting along, even if they don't agree, even though that seems to be in smaller supply than ever in the world. I think that's what we're called here for. Just like we're whole and complete, whether anyone necessarily sees our viewpoint. That doesn't mean that we don't listen, we don't speak from intent, and that gets to where we're going to go next. But I don't
Mhm.
need my identity isn't wrapped up in someone else telling me I'm right. And I
Yeah.
think that's been the big learning for me.
I love that distinction, and it's a nuance, and I think it's really important to share. Hopefully you hear the spirit at which we're sharing. I love that point of like this neutral detachment. It's not that we're coming from a place of wanting everybody to agree with us. It's detaching from the need to be right. it's detaching from, um, you know, having to prove your point of view to
Yeah.
somebody that is
Yeah.
not ready or willing to hear that. Um, and there's a neutrality to what you're talking about. There's a detachment, there's a knowing, like, I can share my perspective and I can hold space and genuinely be interested to a different point of view. That is different than trying to prove to you that my view is the right view. And I think that's where, we're really
Mm.
in inquiry and practice of not pulling the rope, and
Yep.
yet the authenticity of really knowing thyself and knowing what works for you, knowing what you stand for, knowing what matters, and allowing others to have the same right. Um, but, how we go about making choices, I think what we're pointing to is it feels a lot better and it has become more productive for us if we follow flow rather than try to convince and prove and pull the rope.
Yeah, and the other trap here, I had to look it up. So if you heard me typing, I was looking up the source of this. My Not my old boss, but my first boss's kind of colleague way back 30 years ago had a sign in his office from John Morley. I had to look it up. That said, "You have not converted a person simply because you have silenced them." And I think my younger self, I used to be pretty good at silencing people. I just argued, I'd out argue people. I would out volume them. I would outlast them a lot of times. And
Mm.
that's different than helping someone see their own wisdom. And I think it's really different what Plenty does now than 10 years ago, helping people come up with their own conclusions, right? Helping people see, Jenna, phrase that you brought to Plenty that you use all the time, the wisdom's in the room, instead of us coming in like we're the experts and we have the wisdom. No, our role is actually to help facilitate the groups that we work with and the people that we work with to find their own wisdom. And that doesn't happen if you're pulling the
Right.
rope, right?